I picked this book up completely on a whim. Me and the kid went to Circle K. And for those of you that don't know, I don't know how many are still doing it, but I guess Circle K made a deal with either DC themselves or Warner Brothers, since that's who owns them. But they're selling comics in gas stations again. Guys, I have not seen that since like 1988, 1988 to 1990, back when I was a kid and my dad, would go get cigarettes, whatever. I'd run over to the magazine rack and they'd have comics, and that's how I read Bill and Ted, Ghostbusters, and all that good stuff. The only thing that I wish, though, and this is probably my biggest gripe with the direct market, is back in the day, before the direct market, they had newsstand. That's why a lot of the older books that you'll see will have, here, let's use this as an example. So direct market will have the barcode, but see how it says direct edition here? That means that it came from like Diamond Distribution. Back in the day, it would just be the straight up barcode. And then in the earlier days, if it had the barcode, that meant that it was newsstand. And then if it had like a little image of like the bat symbol or Spider-Man or Cap or something, that means it was direct edition. I wish that newsstand would come back. Because even though I'm just utterly thrilled to see comics in gas stations again, what they're doing is they're doing reprints. So this was a series that came out, but you can always tell it's a reprint because of this on the back. So I'm not saying anything's innately wrong with reprints, but it would just be nice to have another way instead of always having to worry about the direct market. So with that said, this is called We Are the Wounded Part 1. I had no idea what it was. My kid wanted to grab some Scooby-Doo Batman mystery comics, and I was just kind of flicking through, and I was like, oh, you know what? I've never heard of this. Let's give it a shot. So we open up, and one thing, and okay, so here's a little bit of a gripe before we even get into it, because I really did like this book, but think about it back in the day, like during the Jim Starlin days, and I'm not talking about like artists, because Norm Brand. Oh, how do you pronounce his name? Y'all know who I'm talking about. His stylized version of Batman was probably like the most iconic for all of us growing up. But I'm talking about in terms of writers. So Jim Starlin and all the people that came before, Chuck Dixon, they would write original stories, and they would add things. Like, for example, I grew up, like, for me, the main focus that really got me into Batman was Nightfall. And when Jean Paul Valley took over as Batman, we saw different things like Chuck Dixon added, almost said Chuck Norris, added this cool like railway subterranean thing that would go under Gotham. It was like an old and abandoned train thing. That was cool. But as we get into these later years, people my age are writing comics now. And I hate that we are having to use member berries in that regard. So what do I mean by that? So I just set the stage. I'm sorry for the anecdote, but they would introduce different ideas. Here, we open up and we see the William Shakespeare bust. Oh, look, Batman 66. Ha ha. Member. And that's what I mean by member berries. That's just one thing that chaps my ass. But anyway, at Central Station, the three are apprehended on the tracks, playing chicken with the oncoming A train. The eldest of them is 12 years old, and tomorrow night, they'll do it again. 24 Gotham children have died playing this game in the decades since the Metro was built. Now, one thing that I will say is, even though at least when because I like how we're seeing the danger in Gotham, we see this open, and then the doors were built. So at least it shows a secret compartment instead of slides. If it was like the slides and it said like Dick and Bruce, I would have probably been a little perturbed at that point. But what it's doing is it's building up the tension, and that's cool. Don't get me wrong. And I like the visual storytelling, how the bust here kind of overlaps the panels. That's really cool composition, in my opinion. It's just the member berries is what chaps my eye. Anyway, in the streets of the Bowery, 6 dogs have been re-released. They were retrieved from the pound by locals who claim them as their pets. These are vicious, wild dogs who roam like wolves, killing cats and terrorizing pensioners. But the Bowery has always had wild dogs, and the people of this city fear seeing it changing around them. And so as we see the crime, just like with the bus just a moment ago, we see Batman pulling on his gloves. And we come over here and it says, a building burns in Cherry Hill. At least this one was already abandoned, an insurance fraud, or just more kids. So even though he's walking into the Bat Cave, obviously this is not part of the cave. We're seeing visual representation because comics are visual mediums. So I love that we're seeing all what Batman's thinking of what's going on in Gotham and that he's getting ready to go. I cannot save people from themselves. Instead, I grit my teeth against the pitch black tumult of their chaos and wait for a light to cut through the dark. And then we see him speed off. And this panel right here, guys, this is what hooked me in the book. So when I first opened it and saw that bust, I went, oh God, here we go, member berries. It's going to be a lot of Mindy. So yes, this does kind of have a Batman 89 feel to it. But Norm Brandfogle, I think is how you pronounce his name, that has this style. We see the forests on the outskirts near Wayne Manor. And then the what do you call it? The lead lines, the visual artistic lines. We see Gotham illuminated in the distance. And of course, we see some blimps because animated series. And then we see the ripples in the sky of the bat signal. That's awesome. I love that. So this is Dan Waters, writer. Hayden Sherman, artist. Triona Farrell doing the colors. Frank Cvetkovic, letterer. Ariana Turturro doing the editing, and Rob Levin, group editor. Batman was created by Bill Finger with Bob Kane. Now, as he comes into Gotham, yes, this very much has the 89 Corvette look to it, but still it has its own flavor. Like it has those 3 headlights, and it looks more tankish than the Corvette version. Well, Lieutenant Corden, I can tell you, it definitely hurts. The killer pinpointed every major nerve cluster in the body without spilling a drop of blood, keeping him alive as he played his body as an orchestra of agony. Now, again, I like how as Batman's going to the scene of the crime, we're starting to see voiceovers lead into what the story is going to be about. But again, even though as much as I enjoyed this book, we've talked about this in length in other reviews, I miss third person, like omnipresent narrator. So instead of this being like Batman thinking, our community member, Sam Gerthy, really kind of clicked the pieces for me because I'm thinking, why does this bug me? And he said it's because the way that he worded it, and I'm going to paraphrase, because he said essentially your hero, whether it be Batman, Spider-Man, Spawn, they're pulling double duty, having to do all the thought thinking for you, and then the dialogue and the action, etc., so forth. Back in the day, if we would have opened this once upon a time ago, rather than being like a journal or whatever, it could have done this. And then where it says I can't save people from themselves, it could have used something like the godly cloud. What's that word? The godly clad hero, the protector of Gotham, thinks to himself that he cannot save people from themselves. Instead, the Dark Knight grits his teeth against the pitch black tumult of her chaos and waits for the luminous light to cut through the dark. And so we have the narrator leading us along, and then we would see the hero. And with that said, because then you're thinking, well, how are we going to know what the character is thinking? The other thing that has been absent from comics for a long time that I miss are thought balloons. So we get the third person narration, we get the dialogue, but then for those of you that may not have been around once upon a time ago, but you've probably seen them in like Silver Age and early Bronze Age comics, and of course Golden Age, they would look like little clouds with dots. Those were thought balloons. So that while we're getting that third person omnipresent narration and the dialogue like this, for example, the doctor here, they're looking at the suspect that we were just talking about where they were hitting all the major nerve points. He goes, from what I've read of your lifestyle, I hope I won't see you on a slab too soon. Now, this character is kind of like supposed to be the medical advisor or the, whatever's that called? Of course, I could start the camera, my brain goes blank. But, the medical one that looks at the body and all that jazz. Anyway, would have been interesting to see like a little thought bubble after he said that, and something like, though it would be interesting to see what makes the Dark Knight tick. Think of that in his mind. That would have been awesome. But we don't get that. So we can't get into these characters' minds like we used to. Where, like Gordon could be sitting here thinking, this guy's an odd fellow, but I trust him enough here with the Dark Knight. Just something to kind of add that little bit of how they're all together, but they still have suspicions of one another. We need something new. Anything to tie this Vic to the previous two. Who's this? The Batman. I knew he'd cross paths eventually on one of these off-the-book moonlight sojourns. Dr. Sarika is a forensic pathologist who just opened a lab at Gotham U. He's been extremely helpful in IDing the cause of death in the worst for wear bodies that have come across the GCPD's desk. I thought he could be of use to us in this case. Corpses tell a story. The wear and tear of a life, bone fractures, wound patterns, and then we cut into what we just talked about. Though I'm sure your bones and flesh hold a myriad of fascinating tales by now. See, instead of that being a dialogue box, that right there would have been great. Like, okay, so we got that, like I was just explaining. We cut there and we come here. Instead of that being spoken out loud, leave that there and put that inside his mind. That would have been freaking awesome. Now, another thing that I do want to set the stage on this is not in main, I guess you'd say prime universe continuity. This is essentially supposed to be a sequel from, we have Frank Miller's Batman Year 1. And then, of course, in the main continuity, they did a Year 2, Year 3. But then, while Year 1 happened, a little bit later, Tim Sell and I think it was Jeff Loeb. Yeah, I think so. They did Dark Knight Victory, and then there was another one, which was supposed to be like sequels to that, along with The Long Halloween. So this book kind of takes place in that universe. This would be, as I looked it up, it's supposed to be kind of like a Year 2. So Batman and Gordon, after the events of Year 1, have kind of started to make this team. And just one of those, so you know. Now, it does get a little wordy. And I like how Batman finally says, Gordon, outside. I don't trust him. He's odd, I'll admit, but he's good at what he does. The drooling, the way his eyes dart around the room, consistent with abuse of whatever that word is, of formaldehyde. Lord, you think Shrink is getting high on embalming fluid? Look, Gotham's last corner quit over a year ago, when the Joker sent him a bouquet of flowers with a "to my favorite collaborator" card. 3 bodies, enough to make a pattern. There'll be something to find, something to lead me to the next target before the killer. And again, he's flying off by himself from Gordon. He doesn't need to be saying this out loud to himself. This could have been a great internal monologue. Bruce is working out the case in his head, but it has to be said out loud. And then another thing, and this is one, and I think this is the other thing, other than the beautiful page that we talked about a moment ago, and of course the visuals here, my God, that's beautiful. What really hooked me on this book is another thing that's been missing from Batman since the late 80s. Seeing Batman be a detective. And not like a globe-trotting, huge over-the-top mystery. I mean, him working the case in the streets of Gotham, still kind of green, getting caught by private security, and has to take them down, even though he does get hit. Because back in the day, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Batman at one time in history was allowed to be vulnerable. And he wasn't always so dickish as he is now. Like yes, in the golden age, they're the one smacking Dick. But I mean, like, just mean-hearted. Like I think it's Hush. No, is it Hush? I can't remember. It might be Hush, where Dick's trying to get something out of him, and they basically end up beating the crap out of each other, leaping across the cave and whatnot. That was not always the case. Yes, he has to be tough, has to be gruff, as we see him take down these guards to get out, but he's still wounded. And we actually, when he was Bruce Wayne, we got to see emotions, and it just kind of feels like we don't get that anymore. And then, of course, the great moment here with Alfred. And, of course, Alfred, because frickin' City of Bane can eat my, where the sun don't shine. One a night, men who lost their families, who were left alone in the world of tragedies. You are aware there's still a shard inside that wound you're stitching. Master Bruce, I'm afraid I must insist. And I love how he just gets resigned to hand Alfred the medical tools because he's trying to say, I'll do it myself. But of course, Alfred has always been his conscience, that word. And so the plot continues to thicken. And one thing that I love is this very much has that Tim Sale look about it. And it also kind of reminds me of I think it was Vertigo. No, it wasn't Vertigo. I don't remember the imprint. It might have been Dark Horse. 100 Bullets. This kind of has that 100 Bullets art style to it. But the villain that they reveal, oh my God, that's almost like something you'd see like in Walking Dead. He shouldn't be this strong. He should be in agony. It's like he doesn't feel it. He doesn't feel it. I need to use the belt. There must be something, some way to stop him hitting me. But apparently, Gallo has been prepared in case the Falcones ever came back for him. The shot is wild. It goes safely wide, but it's still a shotgun fired in the living room. And by the time I see and hear again, the killer's gone. You idiot. You shouldn't be that fast. The hell did that thing want? To torture you to death. What? Why? And so the book ends on a cliffhanger, and this thing is called The Wound Man. And then it's to be continued. So guys, if you want a book that evokes that old school Batman detective style instead of everything always being, oh, I'm fighting Apocalypse this day and I'm going to fight his son Caliban this week, and then we're going to go to the dark multiverse and fight the 1,600 different versions of me and the world's ending. And you want an original, like, down-to-earth feeling Batman story that's connected to stuff that we care about, Dark Patterns is definitely up your alley. So I think next time I go to the comic shop, I'm going to try to find this first arc, because apparently they went crazy with it. And that's another thing, guys. If you've noticed, sometimes these comics that are slept on, that are really freaking good, it's like they go under the radar, like they are not promoted. Like when you flip through more modern comics, yes, they have ads for comics, but it's always these bullshit events like, oh, look at this 600 issue event coming up, but they never advertise stuff like this that hits at the heart of what makes us love these mythos. That's my personal rant. What do you guys think? So if you've enjoyed Dark Patterns, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it's going to get your action figures and comics, and grab this series. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little bat bell next subscribe, that way as I get to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with you on hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure the links down in the description. And if you enjoy what I do and you'd like to support the channel, I'd love the PayPal tip jar link down in the description. And if not, I still appreciate you watching this video. Either way, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.